The god's wood of Winterfell breathed with winter's hush, its ancient weirwood rising pale and silent beneath a velvet sky salted by distant fireflies of starlight. Bran Stark felt them all, every root thread, every heartbeat of moss, every slow sigh of ice-laden wind moving through bare branches. Yet tonight their murmurs were drowned beneath the deeper roar that waited behind his eyes. He sat alone in his wicker chair beneath the heart tree's carved face. Red sap tear tracks glimmered upon the trunk like rubies set into bone, and the tree's lips seemed almost to tremble, as though it shared his secret. Bran drew a long breath, the sense of pine resin and newly fallen snow blurred, replaced by ash and brimstone, by hot salt spray and the burnt metal tang of dragonfire. Far off, war horns howled in tongues long vanished, each note a single flake in a blizzard of memory. He did not fear the storm. He had become the storm, the hinge about which all storms turned. Still, he wrapped his hands around the carved direwolf's heads at his chair's arms, grounding himself in the wood's grain until the throb of wood and earth steadied his pulse. "Not yet," he whispered to the tree. "Not all at once. It would be so easy to let the flood roll over him. 1,000 years of wing beats, scale clatter, screams, songs, victories, ends. Time itself lay like a river ready to burst its banks, and he but a boy holding a single broken stick against the floodgates. He must master the torrent before it mastered him." Hodder's ghost lingered in the stillness, a warm shadow at Bran's back, reminding him what it meant to be consumed by the river. Bran would not let that happen again. He would open only one door tonight, and through that door, find the knowledge he required. He closed his useless legs tight together, as though sheer will might knit dead nerve and sinew whole, then shut his eyes. The heart tree's face dissolved into crimson mist. Darkness folded him into silence so complete he wondered for a heartbeat if he had died. Then the silence cracked, and wings beat in the void. Bran tasted the name as if it were a blade in his mouth, knowing yet not knowing, present and distant. Valyrian's flight was raw power, but in that terrible majesty Bran sensed more. Curiosity, ancient patience, and something that felt like amusement that a two-legged might dared peer through its eyes. Bran might have lingered. He might have watched Valyrian dragonlords clad in glyph-stamped armor ride their smaller beasts in spiraling salute. But the tears on the weirwood's face burned hotter, warning him of limits. One moment longer and the river would claim him entire. So Bran turned, the dragon's head wheeling toward the horizon where green waves kissed red sky. Beneath the spray of the distant sea stood an islet of black glass, at whose crown perched a stone fortress. Dragonstone. Valyrian knew this place well. The breeding pens where eggs warmed in obsidian cradles, the mews where iron-masked caretakers sang to hatchlings, the vaults where sorcerer scribes wrote scaled prophecy in tongues of smoke. Bran felt those memories press against him like coins against flesh. But he tore free, letting the vision crack, and rose instead upon the hushed wind of a later age. Now snow drifted in moonlight over a ruined keep. Smoke twisted from tumbled towers, and the air smelled of wet rot and old ghosts. Bran hovered unseen above the skeleton of Harrenhal, and beneath him coiled smoke wreaths of no ordinary bonfire. Drogon's roar split the night. Black wings lashed wind into hurricane. From the courtyard, soldiers fled in terror, shields abandoned upon cracked flagstones, while a pale woman in a tattered black cloak lifted one hand to the beast. Daenerys Stormborn. Bran knew her, though she would never know him. Not truly. She cried out in a tongue half-forgotten, pleading or commanding, and Drogon crouched, his long neck lowering until fear and devotion danced like torchlight in his scarlet eyes. Bran reached for those eyes, and felt the dragon recoil as if stung. Drogon's mind was forged of obsidian spears and desert winds, not easily pierced. But Bran brought with him the gifts of winter and root and raven, and slowly, Drogon's defenses softened as snow melts beneath spring sun. Bran slid inside. Fire met ice and did not hiss. Instead, the two fused into something stranger than either. Bran found himself riding the currents of Drogon's blood, seeing the world through heat truth. A vista of souls ablaze, each pulse a flicker of orange, blue, white. Daenerys was a pyre of grief and iron resolve. The fearful soldiers' sparks scattering before her. Drogon beat his wings once only, and soared. Towers shrank. The god's eye glittered far off like an onyx gem, and the world below blurred to a dream of miniature tragedies. Bran tasted the freedom of flight yet sensed the pull of countless other wings across centuries. Morgul and Shrikos shrieking over Meereen's pyramids. Tessarian's cobalt flames staining the air above First Tumbleton. Vermithor's broad shadow sweeping over the King's Road during Aegon's conquest. Each name thrummed like plucked string. Each summoned an echo, a promise. I am yours, should you but ask. Bran had not asked. Still they answered. The power was intoxicating. He felt himself unravel. Boy, prince, green seer, dragon lord, all braided into one. The weirwood's sap tears widened to a red torrent. The river would breach. Bran closed every wing all at once. Drogon, Balerion, distant ghosts of sun-feathered mare-axes and sullen cannibal, and wrenched himself back toward Winterfell. The wrench left him dizzy. For a moment he dangled between worlds like a leaf between gusts. Then he landed in pained flesh. Cold flooded his lungs. His eyes flew open. Above him, the heart tree's face bled silently, but the wound was sealing. Bran's breath fogged in crisp night air. He wiped sweat from his brow with a shivering hand. The fire in his veins was banked, not gone. It pulsed behind each heartbeat with promise and peril both. Not yet, Bran told the god faces in the bark. We need rules before madness. Wind answered, threading through branches with a hushing sigh. Distant in the castle, a horn sounded, one long note for the changing of the watch. Life went on, oblivious to the truth lurking behind a boy's gaze. PGSQL. Dawn touched Winterfell in shades of pewter and pale rose. Maester Wolkan found Bran seated at the broken parapet that overlooked the charred remnants of the old tower, quill scratching across a slate. Ink had frozen in its pot overnight. Bran worked in chalk instead, scrawling circles within circles, lines intersecting like spider webbing over lake ice. The ravens report clear weather to the south, the maester said, tugging his cloak tighter. Lord Tyrion writes that King's Landing rebuilds apace. He asks if the Lord of Winterfell might send a fresh lumber train come spring. Bran nodded without looking up. At the center of his chalkweb lay a single glyph. Will you have me draft a reply? Bran considered the question as though Tyrion Lannister were as distant to him as the Undulls of old. Words seemed pitiful small things to bridge the gulf yawning beneath his thoughts. Yet mortal realms ran on words and bread and iron. Ignoring them would court ruin. Tell him the trains will come, Bran said, voice soft as thaw. And remind him stone is slower than sapling. Patience. Wolkan bowed. As he turned to leave, Bran spoke again. Send Alice for me, and my brother if he wakes. Prince Rickon. Bran allowed a faint smile. Boyhood rose within like a sparrow breaking free of snow. The wild pup sleeps wherever he falls. Find him. The maester departed. Bran laid aside the slate and stared across the courtyard. Blacksmith Hamas rang. Stable boys cursed. Steam curled from the kennels as hounds were fed. To most eyes, Winterfell was mending at last, shaking free of war's long grip. Yet Bran's vision pierced deeper, seeing root systems when others saw bark. The North's peace was but a pale dawn before a darker day. Dragons stirred in their hidden graves, eggs sleeping in vaults beneath Pentos manors. Skeletal remains sunk in the smoking sea. Hungry spirits coiled around stones no larger than a child's fist. And across leagues and centuries, Bran felt each one from within, a nervous itch beneath his own skin. To govern such power required more than simple mastery of wardcraft. The children of the forest had known dread rites to bind great beasts, yet those rites carried costs written in bone and starfire. Bran would not pay such costs blindly. There must be law, or else the world would drown in fire. The chalk glyph upon his slate still smoldered in memory. Not merely an initial, a sigil. Drogon, Dom, Dominion. Or perhaps destiny, PGSQL. Alice Karstark joined him beneath the ramparts hours later. She wore a heavy riding cloak flecked with the dust of a hard gallop, cheeks raw pink from northern chill. At her belt dangled a sheathed dirk carved from weirwood. She had carved it herself after the long winter's horrors, more a talisman than weapon. Bran greeted her with eyes still distant. "I dreamed a bridge of wings," he said. She cocked her head. "Another riddle, your grace?" "Not grace," Bran murmured. "Merely boy." He indicated the slate. "Sit. I need your counsel." Alice sat. Snow had melted to slick puddles upon the stone, but she did not flinch from the cold. "Speak your need." Bran tapped the central glyph. "Suppose this is one dragon, the greatest alive, and these," he traced outer loops, "are others across time. Imagine cords between them, invisible but unbreakable, like threads inside a tapestry." "Worm threads," she said softly. Bran's brows lifted. "The Karstark tales?" "Aye." Old Nan's twin sister married a Karstark 400 years past, brought her stories north. She told of worm threads binding dragon souls together, spun by the stranger's own hand. Bran's breath caught. Visions flickered. Weirwood roots tangling with molten gold, a cosmic loom upon which threads of fire shifted with secrets. Perhaps old tales hid deeper truths than their tellers guessed. "If such threads exist," he said, "they make of every dragon a harp string. Touch one, the others sing. And if you pluck too hard, the harp breaks," Alice finished. Bran nodded. "I need to learn the melody before the world hears the discord." She studied him a long while. "You seek to ride them?" "To guide," he corrected, though the word tasted thin. Guide implied control. Control implied hubris. He must not be a second Maegor. "First, I must know their story from the egg onward." "Then you must find their eggs," Alice said. "Some are lost to smoke and stone. Dreams find what hands cannot." Bran smiled, small. "Then tonight we dream together." Alice stroked the weirwood hilt of her dirk. Fear shadowed her eyes, but she did not refuse. "Where first?" Bran's gaze slipped past her, beyond rooftops, beyond frosted fields, to the horizon where morning bled into day. "To the fires before the doom," he whispered. "We will stand in Valyria and listen for the first crack of shell." PGSQL. 3 days later, Winterfell lay beneath a hard steel sky when Jon Snow arrived. His cloak billowed black as crow wings, frosted at the hem with rime. A scattering of wildlings trailed him, lean and wary, their eyes reflecting both loyalty and old distrust. Ghost padded at his side, snow-white fur bristling at sense of hound and hearth. Bran watched from the library tower as Jon dismounted. The brothers had spoken little since the last King's Council, each lost in duties too large for childhood's simple bond. Yet Bran felt his brother's presence as a welcome hearth warmth against encroaching night. Jon carried with him not only news, but memory, and memory was the mortar for futures yet unbuilt. Bran descended to meet him in the courtyard. Rickon arrived first, leaping over a half-frozen puddle, shaggy hair a tangle of wind-blown curls. "Jon!" he shouted, tackling his brother with a ferocity that sent both skidding across churned mud. Ghost barked approval, a deep echo that set ravens flapping from nearby crenels. Jon laughed, though his eyes lingered on Bran's chair with soft sorrow. He clasped Rickon's forearm, then rose and knelt beside Bran. "Little brother, older than you know," Bran said, voice gentle. And then, because the world might end and start within small mercies, he leaned forward to embrace Jon. The hardness of boiled leather, the faint aroma of pine tar and horse sweat. It was real, immediate grounding. When they parted, Bran gestured to the keep. "Come." "There's something you must understand." Jon arched an eyebrow. "Another secret? A truth as old as dragons," Bran replied. "And perhaps their doom or salvation." Jon's smile faded to solemnity. "Tell me everything." Bran wheeled his chair toward the archway leading to the solar, its dark oak doors carved with dire wolves chasing stags through knotwork forests. Rickon ran ahead to alert the cooks. Ghost followed silent, red eyes tracking every shadow. Jon kept pace with Bran, his stride easy despite the day-long ride, but tension thrummed through him like a taut bowstring. Whatever peace the wall's fall had brought the realm, Jon felt its cost in his marrow. Inside the solar, fire crackled. Bran dismissed the servants. Only he, Jon, and Ghost remained, with Alice standing guard near the shuttered windows. Bran spoke then of hearts that beat in flame, of wings that stitched past to present, of worm threads thrumming within the world's dark loom. He spoke until Jon's silence became a second hearth, banked but glowing. At last Jon set one hand to Longclaw's pommel. "If you misstep, whole kingdoms may burn again." "I know," Bran said. "That is why I need the one-man dragons once feared, the man who killed one." Jon flinched. He would never forget Viserions' fall beyond the wall, nor the horror of seeing that dragon's corpse rise under the Night King's will. "I had no choice." "Nor do we," Bran said. "Drogon remains alive because you stayed her hand in King's Landing. He trusts you more than any living soul save perhaps his queen's bones." Jon's jaw clenched. "You ask me to call him?" "I ask us to call him," Bran corrected. "Together." Outside the shutters, winter wind howled like distant wings. PGSQL. The godswood at twilight held an expectant hush. Candle lanterns ringed the heart tree, their flames trembling beneath glass. Bran sat at the roots, chalk slate across his lap once more. Jon stood beside him, hand resting lightly upon the chair's back. Alice knelt opposite, eyes closed, breath misting in calm rhythm. Rickon crouched nearby, clutching a small drum he had carved from elk hide and cedar, a gift from the free folk who revered rhythm as prayer. Ghost lay with head upon paws, every muscle poised. Bran spoke words older than any maester's parchment, gleaned piecemeal from whispered leaves and the wind's memory. Rickon tapped the drum, slow heartbeat thuds that matched Bran's pulse. Jon inhaled the cold, letting it burn clarity through doubt. Bran's vision slipped beneath roots, into the black-red labyrinth where time pooled in secret grottos. He flew along buried tributaries until he found the thread he sought, a strand pulsing with volcanic heat. Drogon. He reached. The strand quivered. Across leagues, across months, a dragon stirred where he slept among ruined pyramids. The bond between queen and beast had frayed but never snapped. It hummed now, suspicious. Bran bled a fraction of his self into that hum, weaving not command but call. Jon lent strength. He remembered Drogon's cry when Daenerys fell, the heartbreak in black eyes as the beast melted iron that had caged her ambition. Jon poured regret, love, and unspoken apology into the thread. He offered no lies, only the raw ache of truth. In distant jungles, Drogon lifted his head. Scavengers fled. The night blazed bright as his nostrils exhaled embers. The thread thickened, until Bran felt it tug as though it might yank Winterfell itself south. He let it tether, but he did not reel Drogon north. Dragons were not hawks, to be whistled at a wrist. They were storms. You beckoned a storm, it decided whether to come. Hours passed. The drum slowed, then stilled. Alice opened her eyes. Rickon shivered. Bran spoke, throat raw. "He knows." Jon asked only, "Will he answer?" A gust slammed the treetops. Snow cascaded in glittering sheets, dancing through torch glare. Bran could not help but smile, though exhaustion weighted his bones. "We will hear his wings within 3 moons." Jon nodded once, grim. "Then we prepare." Bran's eyelids drifted. The fire in him guttered low, but behind it new winds stirred. Winds older than men or dragons, winds that whispered of ice deeper than winter, and a fire hotter than Valeria's core. If he was to shape the coming storm, he must master both. Drogon was but the first chord. Soon the symphony would swell, each dragon across time answering the call. And when they came, Bran Stark, boy, greenseer, crippled prince, would sit upon the world's unseen throne, weaving past and present into a future none yet dreamed. Snowflakes dusted his hair. In the sky above, a single star blazed red, bright enough to sear the night. Bran watched until it burned a brand upon his sight, then closed his eyes at last, surrendering to sleep that was not sleep, to dreams that were more than dreams, to the river that would one day carry every dragon to his hand. PGSQL. Long before the first torch was lit in Winterfell's great hall that evening, a hush settled over the castle like a blanket of hoarfrost. Every raven upon every roof ridge cocked its head toward the southern sky. Every kennel hound whined at doors and scratched at straw. Even the old gray mare in the stable tossed her mane and rolled the whites of her eyes. None present understood the cause, but Bran Stark felt it shiver through the marrow of the world. One plucked strand quivering upon the unseen harp. Drogon had taken wing. Bran sat alone in the library to WER, breath clouding in the candlelit gloom, quill poised above parchment. His slate lay discarded beside him. Tonight demanded ink that would not vanish with a brush of sleeve. He wrote in a hand that barely seemed his own, not the blocky scrawl of a child learning letters, nor the neat loops Maester Luwin once drilled into him, but a flowing script like smoke and Talon strokes intertwined. He wrote of boundaries, of promises, of the price to be paid if dragon and boy overstepped the weave of time. Words alone would not chain destiny, yet words spoken at the turning of an age could become lodestones about which futures curved. Outside, snow hissed against shutters. Bran dipped the quill again and again until the parchment drank half a bottle of ink. Only then did he set the quill aside and close his eyes. He did not leave his body. He merely listened to the faint crackle of wood in the hearth, to the scroll of wind beneath rafters, to the heartbeat of the castle itself. In those rhythms he felt the approaching storm front, a pressure that squeezed his temples and made even the candles sway. Drogon was coming, not this night, nor perhaps the next, but each hour shortened the gap between wingbeat and stone. The dragon's mind pressed against the realm like a thunderhead waiting summer air, and all creatures sensitive to such tremors stirred in unease. Bran opened his eyes when the door creaked. Jon stood silhouetted by dim torchlight, cloaked in black, snow glittering upon his shoulders like shards of glass. He said nothing, only stepped inside and shut the door behind him, barring it with practiced quiet. Then he crossed the rug and laid Longclaw upon the table beside Bran's inkpots. White wolf pommel gleamed. They sat in silence while wind rattled the shutters. Bran waited for Jon to speak first. Eventually he did, voice low. "I walked the battlements. The guards hear ghosts." "Not ghosts," Bran answered. "Footsteps of fire." Jon nodded as though he had expected no other answer. "Wildlings smell it too. They know the air before a storm." He hesitated. "I remember the last storm well enough." Bran tasted the grief behind those words, sorrow stretching from the frozen lake to the broken walls of King's Landing. He offered no comfort. Comfort could be a lie when truth demanded open eyes. Instead he said, "That storm was forged in despair. The one coming now is forged in choice." Jon's gaze drifted to the parchment. "You write laws for dragons?" "Laws for myself," Bran said. "So I will not forget them when the river rises." Jon's brow furrowed. "Will parchment hold if fire melts stone? If the words are carved upon the self, not even fire can erase them." Jon exhaled. His breath carried a tremor of fear, less for himself than for the realm he had killed a queen to save. He ran a thumb along Longclaw's crossguard. Ghost found tracks beyond the ridge. Direwolf, but larger. Old prints filled with ice. Bran felt a prickle beneath his skin. The last of the other's beasts roamed north long ago. And yet prints. Bran closed his eyes again, searching the dark eddies of the world for the presence that once bore the Night King's crown. He felt nothing but the distant cold of glaciers and the deeper cold of the stars. Still, prints on snow could not lie. "We will watch," he said. "But Drogon is nearer than any ice spawn now." Jon rose, retrieving his sword. At the door he paused. "When he comes, tell me where to stand, and where not to." "Stand where your heart guides you," Bran said, "and trust one will not let fire consume the wrong souls." Jon left without further word. Bran listened until his footsteps faded, then let the wind lull him into silence once more. He felt the wheel of time spin, its spokes catching upon moments too grand for any one life to contain. Yet life must contain them or be ground to ash. PGSQL. 2 days later, Alice Karstark anchored a circle of black salt upon the Godswood's packed snow. She worked with leather gloves off, fingertips red and cracked yet sure. Rickon shadowed her, grumbling at cold but fetching pouches of ash, vials of melted icicle water, shards of obsidian chipped from the castle's dragonglass cache. Bran watched from his chair, thick wolf fur thrown over his legs. The preparation was half ritual, half memory, gleaned from fragments of children lore whispered by trees and from older, darker teachings that seeped through cracks in the weirwood's deep root hollows. At each of the circle's 8 compass points, Alice drove an obsidian shard into frozen earth. Between each shard she sprinkled salt and ash in braided lines, chanting in old tongue. Rickon kept cadence with a low drumbeat, its cadence echoing Bran's own slow pulse. When the circle closed, the air inside grew heavy, as though sealed beneath glass. The heart tree's red sap tears glistened brighter. Its carved face seemed to watch. Bran wheeled himself to the edge, stopping just shy of the salt line. Alice spoke softly. "Cross and the bond is woven. Your soul to the fire trace, my soul to yours. I can still turn back." "You would never," Bran said and rolled forward. The wheel rims hissed over salt. Cold air within the circle pressed against his cheeks like a living hand, testing, asking. Bran exhaled and offered a single drop of his own blood. Thumb pricked upon a sewing needle, letting it fall to mingle with ash. The droplet sizzled. Rickon's drumbeat faltered in astonishment. Bran closed his eyes. He sank, not into darkness, but into red gold glow, hot and bright, clamor of wings overhead. The vision snatched him sideways through time. He stood upon a black derelict causeway of Valyria, the 14 flames looming, rivers of lava casting an unholy dusk. Before him stretched an amphitheater of fused dragonbone, its seating carved from massive ribs, its stage an altar of obsidian carved into a dragon's yawning maw. Around that maw, dragon lords gathered in masks of copper and gold. They chanted in a language older than High Valyrian. At the altar's lip rested 3 eggs, deep green, alabaster, and night blue. The green opened first, cracks glowing white-hot. A hatchling emerged, scaled in living emerald, eyes like molten jade. As its first shriek pierced the air, Bran felt every dragon heart across history answer in exultation. Threads of power wove outward from that moment, binding past and future as roots bind soil. He watched the other eggs crack, heard the symphony rise. The vision swelled until he feared it would burst him. But Alice was there, her spirit like silver thread wound about his wrist, steadying him, guiding him back. The amphitheater dissolved into strands of red gold light, each thread a dragon's first breath. They braided into a rope thicker than any anchor cable, and at the rope's far end Bran glimpsed Drogon's ember-red eye blinking in the present. Drogon roared. The circle in Winterfell shook. Branches groaned overhead. Nearby ravens scattered. Bran's chair lurched. He would have toppled had Alice's unseen strength not steadied him. Then the roar receded, echo becoming tremor, becoming silence. Bran opened his eyes. Snow stung them sharp and real. Rickon stared, drum forgotten in the crook of his arm. Alice knelt opposite, breath ragged, sweat freezing upon her brow. She managed a smile. "The thread is woven." Bran nodded, voice weak. "He knows our names now." Rickon found his words. "Did you talk to him? Like, speak." Bran's gaze drifted skyward. Clouds churned in confused spirals. Somewhere far south, Drogon re-angled his flight, wings banking toward Westeros as sure as an arrow sighting its mark. "Not words," Bran said. "Only promise." Alice shivered. "Then we must keep it." PGSQL. 6 days later, the Blackwater River's delta churned beneath a shadow no fisherman could name. Dockworkers craned upward as a dark star blotted the sun, trailing contrails of ash. Bells tolled in King's Landing. First the harbor's warning bell, then the September's, then every humble iron tongue from Flea Bottom to the Red Keep spire. City folk screamed that the doom had returned. Soldiers fled their posts, yet no flames fell. The shadow merely passed, soaring north. Tyrion Lannister watched from the Hand's tower balcony, goblet forgotten in his trembling fingers. Queen Sansa was away in the Riverlands, parleying with broken lords. The small council panicked without her. Archmaester Kurth looked ready to swoon. Ser Bran muttered curses best left to stable-yard muckers, and Lord Davos whispered prayers to gods old and new alike. Tyrion alone understood the shape of those wings. He knew the silhouette of grief, and he feared, not for his own life, but for the fragile peace he and Sansa stitched with blood-soaked thread. He watched Drogon vanish beyond distant clouds, then turned inward, mind racing along the crooked corridors of politics. "Send riders north," he commanded, voice iron despite shaking hand. "Inform Winterfell their guest is near." "If Winterfell summoned it," Kurth quavered, "why warn them?" Tyrion's small body drew tall with outrage. "Because any dance with dragons tramples the realm, and I will not see another field of fire." Ravens left the rookery within the hour, wings beating against winter winds. They carried scrolls penned in Tyrion's crabbed script, each sealed with split wax bearing the dire wolf and lion conjoined. They raced the storm shadow itself, though none expected they would catch it. PGSQL. Drogon did not rest at sea, nor upon the crags of Crackclaw Point, nor at the ruins of Maidenpool. He flew as arrow-true as Bran's promise, stopping only once. Upon the stony spine of Skagos Island, where goat herds shrieked and fled as black wings eclipsed a pale moon. There he perched upon a granite outcrop, head cocked northward, as if sniffing the hearth smoke of Winterfell. Then he leapt skyward again, leaving Talon prints that seethed steam. On the 5th evening after his shadow crossed King's Landing, a storm rolled over the Dreadfort. Lightning forked from anvil clouds, illuminating the veil between Last Hearth and Winterfell in strobing bursts of violet. Jon Snow rode the wall walk, cloak snapping, eyes scanning that electric horizon. Beside him, Lord Wyman Manderly's grandson Ser Dennis muttered a prayer. "Father, save us from sky demons." Jon said nothing. He felt Ghost's hackles rise before the next flash of lightning revealed a shape among clouds. Massive, pulsing with internal emberlight, scales flickering bronze where rain struck them. Thunder boomed. It was not sky thunder. It was wings. Within the Godswood, Bran felt the exact moment Drogon's heart hammered against the treeline south of the castle. The dragon circled once over the outer walls, shrieking so loud window glass sang in sympathy. Soldiers ducked, crossbows trained, but Jon shouted before bolts loosed. "Hold! Lower your arms!" Lightning through his silhouette 10 stories tall. The men obeyed their king of the north, though fear near unmanned them. Drogon banked into the courtyard, claws splaying, wings breaking with such force dust devils whirled up snow. He landed like a collapsing tower, cobblestones shattering under his weight. Black smoke vented from his nostrils. He sniffed the air, searching. Bran sat at the circle's center, cloaked in wolf furs, eyes pale as winter sky. He watched the beast through more than mortal sight. Drogon's soul burned before him like a comet, trail stretching backward through Esso's deserts and forward into Dream. Alice stood at Bran's back, hand upon the weirwood hilt of her dirk. Jon strode through a gate of men, long claw sheathed, helm abandoned. He halted 5 paces from the circle's edge. The courtyard crackled with unseen power. Drogon's head swung toward Jon, the man who had ended his mother's life. Fire gathered in the dragon's throat, glimmering between iron fangs. Jon met the gaze without flinching. "Dracarys," he whispered, not in challenge but in remembrance. Bran spoke, voice a winter breeze across ice. "Drogon, son of regal and unknown sire, bearer of her grief, hear my promise." His eyes rolled white. Threads invisible to all others flared gold, linking Bran's heart to the beast's. Drogon froze, flame dying behind his teeth. He cocked his head, nostrils flaring. Bran lifted one palm, slow. "No chains," he said.
No calles.
"Only flight and purpose." Drogon growled, a boulder rolling down a canyon. Bran lowered his hand, offering emptiness, trust. The dragon leaned forward, hot breath raising steam from Bran's furs. One massive eye, deep as the void, fixed upon the boy. Bran beheld stars within it, entire constellations swirling. He reached with mind and soul and gently touched that galaxy. Fire did not burn him. Instead, it opened like a gate. Through it Bran slid, not riding but walking side by side with the dragon's colossal consciousness. Memories flooded him. Daenerys's laughter on a windy seaside rampart, the taste of roasted sheep, the agony of spears in Meereen, the empty ache of mourning as hot iron ran red beneath his talons. Bran offered his own memories in return. Winterfell's first snowfall, Hodder's sacrifice, Robb's smile before war, the sound of the children's songs echoing in a cave beneath frost. Bonds soldered, neither master nor servant, but mirror. Drogon exhaled softly, a plume of steam. He folded his wings and settled upon his belly like a cat, eyes half closing. Jon let out a breath he had not known he held. Soldiers atop the wall cheered, a ragged, improbable cheer that died quickly when Drogon's tail twitched. Bran spoke aloud though his voice trembled. "He will rest in the Godswood's clearing. None will hinder him. Bring half a steer, freshly bled, and barrels of water. No flames." Jon signaled and men scurried. Rain began to fall, soft, cleansing, smelling faintly of ash. Bran wheeled forward. Drogon watched him, posture easing. Alice hurried to push Bran's chair over shattered stones. They passed beneath the dragon's wing. Its membrane tremored like living silk. Bran felt the echo of thunder within its blood and knew the first chord of the symphony was struck. PGSQL. Night fell silver quiet. Snow melted to mist where Drogon's body radiated warmth across the Godswood. He lay coiled near the heart tree, tail tucked, head resting before the red-leaved trunk as though seeking counsel of old gods. Bran sat opposite, chair wheels half sunken in mud, eyes half-lidded in trance. Their breaths formed twin clouds, pale boy, dark dragon, rising to mingle beneath naked branches. Jon paced along the perimeter, ghost at his side. Alice kept watch from a nearby boulder, dirk across her knees. Rickon dozed against the roots, trusting the sight of Bran's placid face. Within the trance, Bran and Drogon walked a road paved in memory marble. Statues lined it, dragons wrought of obsidian, each bearing a name beneath. Meraxes, Vagr, Caraxes, Tessarion, Morgul, Shrikos, Syrax, Stormcloud, Vermithor. Their eyes glowed dull, awaiting spark. Bran approached the first statue. He laid a spectral palm upon Meraxes' snout and whispered a question. The stone warmed, but did not wake. Drogon watched, head cocked, tail swishing like a dog's. Bran realized these effigies could not be kindled by him alone. They required living flame. He turned to Drogon and touched the beast's shoulder where scale met muscle. Drogon bent, opening massive jaws. A single thread of flame spilled forth, gentle as a candle's kiss, touching Meraxes' eyes. They flared, igniting blue-white. The statue shook itself. Stone became scale, wings unfurled. Bran felt a new thread join the harp's cord. A voice deep and resonant, female, fierce. One by one, they woke more. Vagr's eyes shimmered crimson, Syrax gold, Stormcloud jade. Each awakening braided another strand around Bran's soul. The harp's melody swelled, complex, terrifying in beauty. Drogon lent flame willingly now, eager to share the burden. But when they came to the last statue, Vermithor, Bronze Fury, Drogon hesitated. Bran felt the reason. Vermithor had been Maegor's father's mount, thrice blooded in war, temper scarred by brutal rains. His shade slept uneasy. Bran touched its brow, encountering not stone but churning memories of conquest and betrayal. He braced himself, signaled Drogon. The flame that poured forth was darker, tinged with sorrow. Vermithor's eyes ignited bronze. He stirred, and Bran felt a jolt like hammer on anvil. The harp strings thrummed discord. Vermithor's voice was iron and ancient law. Who summons? Why do you bind what will not be bound? Bran answered with thought words. I summon not to bind, but to weave, to give purpose. Purpose is bondage by gentler name. Vermithor's tail slammed ground. What purpose can justify the Doom's song anew? Bran showed him the last war. Ash snowing on King's Landing, shadows melted upon walls, a queen screaming her pain to deaf gods. He showed the Night King's march, the dead rising, the world teetering between ice and flame. He showed the promise of balance, the weirwood's deep root and dragon's high wing entwined to guard dawn from eternal night. Vermithor's growl softened. Balance, a wheel within a wheel, and who stands at the hub? Bran neither flinched nor lied. I stand, but not alone. All stand or none. The bronze dragon's molten eyes narrowed. Then let the harp be tuned. The discord bled into harmony, though its notes remained edged, like a sword's whisper between ribs. Bran accepted that edge. Every promise bore risk. He turned and found the road behind him transformed. No statues now, only living dragons gliding across a twilight sky ringed by silver constellations. Each circled a central star, Bran himself, yet none wore chains. They flew of their own will, their paths flowing like calligraphy across cosmic parchment. Drogon roared, joyous, and the host answered. Scales glittered ruby, sapphire, emerald. Wings flashed like strobe signals across eternity. Bran felt tears upon his cheeks. Real tears, warm against cold night air. He opened his eyes in the godswood and saw Drogon regarding him with something like feline contentment. The beast blinked, and Bran knew the pact held. But across the harp, a single thread twanged off-key, distant, cold, edged with frost. Bran followed it. Mind's eye thrust north of the wall, across dead forests unto a cavern of blue crystal. There, coiled around a mound of ice, lay the skeletal remains of an ancient Wrm. Bones fused with frozen shadow, faint cyan flames flickering in empty sockets. An ice dragon, nameless, restless. The harp's fire had stirred it, and now it opened a soundless maw to breathe hoarfrost into the darkness. Bran recoiled, heart pounding. Balance again hovered on a knife's edge. For every flame awakened, a mirror of cold might answer. He must be watchful. He must prepare. PGSQL. The next morning, Bran convened a council beneath the broken tower's shadow. Jon, Alice, Rickon, Ser Davos arrived by horse breathless. Maester Wolkan and Lady Lyanna Mormont, summoned from Bear Island on S. Whiffed sails, gathered around a frost-rimmed table. Drogon slept beyond the walls, belly distending from half a dozen slaughtered cattle. His snores rippled castle banners. Bran spoke plainly. Dragons will come, some by wing, some by memory. We may guide them, but not all will heed gentle song. Davos scratched his beard. I survived one field of fire, saw lads cooked in their armor like crabs in a pot. How do we stop that from happening again? By choice, Bran said. Ours and theirs. We offer sanctuary, purpose. We deny them war sport. Lyanna snorted. Beasts the size of hills seldom obey courtesy. Alice met her gaze. Courtesy backed by ice and stonecraft older than men. Bran continued. First task, reinforce the godswood. Obsidian pylons at cardinal points, carved with the glyphs I will scribe. Second, evacuate small folk within 10 leagues. Third, gather singers, those who know the old songs, whether free folk or crannogmen. Dragons heed music. Jon frowned. Songs? Sound guides thread, Bran said, like current guides fish. Wolkan shuffled parchments. And should other realms protest? The Vale has nights. The Reach has harvests. The Crown has fear. Bran's eyes unfocused, glimpsing wings. They will come north or flee west. Either path we must prepare. Ser Davos cleared his throat. And the cold echo you felt, what of it? Bran met the old knight's weathered eyes. I will journey beyond the wall with Alice and Ghost. We must greet what stirs there before it takes shape. Jon slammed his fist upon the table.
No.
I ride with you.
Bran smiled, sad.
The North needs its king. The North needs its brother, Jon retorted. Bran grew quiet. Snow drifted through a broken arch, settling upon his hair. Very well. Rickon will hold Winterfell. Lady Lyanna, guard him with your house. Davos, you coordinate evacuations and supplies. Wolkan, ready the glyph posts. Orders accepted, though unease rippled through the council like a fox in henhouse. In that unease, Bran sensed the future's weight, heavier than any crown. But the harp of dragons played now, and he its reluctant minstrel. If his fingers slipped, the melody would become cacophony, and the world might drown in flame or ice without discerning which fate was kinder. PGSQL. For nights later, Bran, Jon, Alice, and Ghost crossed the remnants of the wall at Shadow Tower, where tumbled ice formed a jagged canyon gleaming under aurora-lit sky. They rode shaggy mounts lent by Tormund Giantsbane, who paced beside them, axe on shoulder, eyes glittering with half-buried worry. I seen strange lights north, he grumbled. Colors wrong, flickering inside storms that never break, as if the sky itself can't make up its mind. Bran nodded. He felt those tremors too, strings plucked by forces not of his weaving. The ice dragon's lair lay far within the haunted forest, beyond static blizzards and frostbitten lakes. His bones waited, restless. He must reach it before the echo awakened to true life. They left horses at the edge of the deepest woods. Snow fell soundless, heavy. Bran rode a drag sled fashioned by the free folk, Jon and Tormund towing in turns while Alice ranged ahead with Ghost, scouting. Hours passed into an indigo dawn. The aurora faded, replaced by a chalky sky. Silence reigned. No raven cawed, no wolf howled. Even wind held its breath. Bran knew they neared the cave. Alice signaled. She pointed to a hillside mottled with hoarfrost. Ice crystals jutted like clustered knives around a gaping maw. Blue frost smoke drifted forth, curling around pine trunks and leaving them glazed white. Ghosts were ruffled. He growled, ears flat. Jon drew Longclaw. Tormund hefted axe. Bran raised one palm. Steel cannot sway what lies inside, he said. Follow, but do not strike until I call. He rolled his sled forward, wheels crunching frozen moss. Cold so intense it felt a flame washed over him. He closed his eyes, reached for fire threads, and felt them flicker distant, faint against this northern heart of absolute zero. Yet they answered. Merix's voice thrummed encouragement. Syrax crooned. Drogon stirred in Winterfell, raising his head. Bran breathed frost. He entered the cave. Darkness glittered with shards of ice, each reflecting a warped world. In the center coiled the WRM skeleton, ribs arching like cathedral vaults, skull half as large as a farmhouse. Within empty eye sockets burned pale blue wisps. Bran halted. He extended thought speech. Old One, rise not in wrath. Hear the balances call. The wisps flared. A voice rustled like snow sliding from a branch. Fireborn child would chain me as the first men chained Moon's daughter. Not chain. Weave. Two halves. Fire and ice. Together guard dawn. Dawn dies each night regardless. Bran felt it slipping, the cold contempt of ages untouched by warmth. He reached deeper, fingers trembling. He summoned Drogon's roar across the lattice. The gods would answered. Flames sprang in his mind, and he shaped them into music. Notes Rickon's drum once tapped, notes of old First Men lullabies. The cave resonated. Frost cracked along ribs. The wisps flickered, uncertain. Bran offered memory of a dawn when frost and sun mingled to birth a rainbow across Wintertown's rooftops. Children laughed, chasing spectrum ghosts. The ice WIRM's grudging curiosity trickled forth. Cold Swirl asked, "What is laughter?" Bran showed it. Rickon's mud-splattered grin, Arya's crooked smirk, Hodder's gentle booming joy, Memory's melted frost. The blue wisps dimmed, then flared white, changing hue as they absorbed the warmth of recollection. Bran extended a final plea. "Stand with us. Guard the balance. Walk beside flame, not against. Be winter's voice without hate." The skeleton shuddered. Ice cascaded from vertebrae. A deep, distant rumble echoed through the cave, like glaciers grinding bedrock. Slowly, inexorably, the ancient bones knit with spectral flesh of glimmering crystal. Wings of translucent ice unfurled, edges catching stray dawnlight slanting through fissures above. The ice dragon rose. A blast of cold wind thrust Bran back. Jon caught the sled's handles, bracing. Frost coated his beard instantly. Tormund swore, breath forming icicles. Alice lifted her dirk, but Bran held up a hand. The dragon lowered its head. Eyes burned now not blue but palest dawn pink, like first light kissing snow. It spoke without words. "I will watch." Then it coiled, folding wings about ribcage, and settled once more, but no longer restless. The frost smoke vanished. Pine needles greened in its absence. Bran exhaled, collapsing inward. Threads quieted. Balance tipped toward harmony once again. Frail, trembling, but real. Outside, the sun rose pure and gold, scattering snow mist into shards of light. Bran felt the harp settle across his shoulders. The song was not finished, it had barely begun. Dragons of shadow and flame turned their gaze to the north, awaiting the next movement. And beyond mortal ken, wheels within wheels spun, awaiting choice. Bran Stark, boy of blood and broken bone, green seer and dragon friend, wheeled from the cave entrance into sunlight. Jon walked beside, Ghost following, Tormund stamping warmth into his boots, Alice wiping silent tears from her lashes. Bran tasted the dawn air and smiled, though the smile held sorrow for all that must yet burn and freeze. Far south, in the Citadel's highest tower, glass candles flared for the first time in 100 years, unbidden. Archmaester Marwyn woke in terror, sensing the weave tighten. In King's Landing, Tyrion tossed on a sleepless bed, dreaming of shadows with wings. On Dragonstone's black beach, 3 unhatched eggs whispered inside their fossil shells. And in Winterfell's Godswood, Drogon raised his head toward the north, rumbling a low note that echoed through stone and root alike. A promise, a warning, a lullaby of fire. PGSQL. Dawn painted the bleak sky over the haunted forest in streaks of diluted rose, but the color felt borrowed from some warmer world that had no business this far north. Snow still clung to the black bark of shattered pines, and the hush that followed the ice dragon's awakening lay over the land like a newly fallen shroud. Bran Stark watched the sunrise from a small rise beyond the cave mouth, his stolen sled drawn up beside a dead fire pit. The others were breaking camp below. Tormund Giantsbane cursed the cold as he rolled furs. Jon Snow bent over his pack, methodically checking the clasps. Alice Karstark knelt in the drifts, drawing a sigil with a finger that left no imprint on the glossy crust. Ghost paced the perimeter, nose to the wind, hackles rippling with each exhale of frost. Bran could still feel the ice dragon's presence, subtle now, like the echo of a gong after the first deafening strike. The beast had folded itself back into slumber, yet it remained awake in ways the waking world could not measure. Its breaths were now the movements of glacier and cloud. It had taken no name. Names belonged to mortal tongues. That WRM was older than language, as devoid of vanity as a mountain. Bran knew they ought to head south at once, but caution pinned him to that rise. The harp of dragons had grown grander overnight, yet a single note might still unseat the whole symphony, and he needed to listen, truly listen, before he dared let the next note ring. So he let his mind wander. He was still within himself. He did not warg, but his thoughts drifted outward like seeds on wind. He found mare axes circling the summer sea 1,000 years gone, chasing bright-backed whales. He found seracs curling about the mud-brick towers of old Volantis in search of spiced goat. He found Balerion hunched atop a basalt column where the smoking sea steamed, gazing into waters that still boiled with the skeletons of gods. Each dragon resonated with the others through time. Each turned its head fractionally, as though some distant gong had sounded. Bran withdrew before the sum of their attention scorched him. He opened his eyes to the weak dawn. A magpie hopped along a naked branch, feathers sleek as hammered onyx. It winked one bright bead of an eye, cocked its head, and uttered a harsh little caw that somehow sounded amused. Bran inclined his chin in greeting. Ravens were his usual heralds, but the gods played diversely. "You look half asleep and half dead," Tormund said, trudging up the rise. Frost had stiffened his beard into white tusks. "Which half talks?" Bran smiled. "Whichever you're willing to feed." Tormund grunted, shoved a strip of smoked caribou into Bran's glove. "Eat, dreamer. If you fall apart out here, I'm not carrying your bones." He looked back at the cave. "That thing's staying put? For now. Good. One dragon here's bad enough. Ice or fire, they all shit bigger than a man." The wildling slapped Bran's shoulder in rough affection and stomped back to camp. Alice rose from her sigil work, brushed snow from her knees, and approached Bran. "The glyph held overnight," she said, eyes silver bright with reflected dawn. "I felt the cold try to seep in, but the ward breathed it out." "We will lay more on our way south," Bran answered. "Every 100 paces until the wall. The song between ice and fire is quiet. We keep it so." She nodded, then hesitated. "What of the other dragons?" Bran looked west, where clouds stacked like dark towers above distant peaks. "They stir. Some are little more than memory now. Shadows that cannot cross into flesh. But memory can burn if fanned. Others are flesh already, kept in secret or in sloth. They will travel when the time is right." "And Vermithor?" Bran's gaze slipped sideways, as though someone might overhear. "He is uncertain, not rebellious but proud. His scars ache." Alice fingered the weirwood hilt at her belt. "A proud dragon is an untrustworthy ally." "A proud dragon is like a proud man," Bran corrected. "Teach him purpose beyond pride. Then he is strong." She did not argue. Together they watched the sky pale, until dawn was fully spent and day began the slow thaw of clarity. PGSQL. They began the journey back with the sun a mere smudge behind gauze. Bran rode the sled again, Jon and Tormund dividing the pull while Alice scouted flanks. The forest felt less oppressive, as though a tyrant had vacated his frozen throne, taking his dread silence with him. Wind rattled branches. Ravens croaked overhead. Somewhere far off a snow hare shrieked at a stoat's bite. Life was returning, and yet Bran sensed the watchers, spirits in frost-carved hollows, eyes of whatever had once served the Night King. They did not impede, only observed, as though weighing new allegiances. Bran let them watch, let them judge. Balance lived by witness. They reached the breached wall by dusk the second day. The ruins reared like splintered tusks of ancient glacier. Bran instructed Alice to carve a final glyph directly into one of the fallen ice slabs. She chiseled the sigil with dragonglass, each stroke bleeding pale blue light that seeped into cracks and froze there like trapped moonlight. When she finished, the ruin glowed faintly, and the watchers withdrew deeper into the gloom. They found their horses pawing impatiently at packed snow. Jon fed them fistfuls of oats. Tormund strapped supplies. Without discussion, they rode south beneath starlight. No one wished to camp in the wall's shadow. By the time first gray hints of dawn spread over wintry hills, the outline of Last Hearth rose ahead like a squat sentinel. Smoke curled from chimneys. Wolves howled from kennels. Soldiers at the palisade hailed them with torches. Lord Eddard Umber, burly and red-eyed from worry, met them in the yard. He had heard Bran's summons raven quick. Send woodcutters, masons, and teamsters to Winterfell at once, laden with timber and tools. Now he demanded to know what madness required so much lumber in midwinter. Bran told him truths simple enough. A dragon had come, more might follow, The gods would require reinforcement. Eddard blanched. Jon added iron to the order. Send every able craftsman, and enough small folk to guard them. If the realm burns, the north must not. Lord Umber bowed, throat bobbing, and set to the levy without further protest. Bran's party ate hearth bread and broth, slept 2 hours, then rode hard again. They reached Winterfell at twilight of the following day. Steam rose in soft plumes from the castle's vent holes. Dragon heat still lingered. The outer bailey swarmed. Masons carrying blocks, smiths forging braces, sawyers reducing trees to shaped beams. Everywhere, the glyph pylons stood at quarter-built heights, surfaces etched with weirwood runes and inlaid iron. Wolkan oversaw with a harried air, parchment and charcoal in mittens. He hurried to Bran's sled, relief flooding his lined face. "My lord, the first circle is nearly complete, but we've exhausted our store of dragonglass. Lord Davos sent boats to Dragonstone, yet the narrow sea runs thick with pack ice. We will fetch more from the caves on Skagos," Bran cut in. "Send a raven requesting Ser Dennis Manderley to sail at dawn with 3 holds empty. I will provide map and blessing." Wolkan bowed, scurried off. Jon and Tormund saw to stables. Alice strode to the godswood. Bran followed slower, wheels crunching through half-melted slush. He passed villagers gawking at him as though he were a ghost riding iron. Perhaps he was. Ghost padded behind. Drogon lay curled beneath the heart tree, wings cloaking roots like a leathery pavilion. His nostrils smoked lightly with each breath. His eyes, half-lidded, tracked the intruders with feline languor. Bran sensed no agitation, only watchful calm. He maneuvered his chair close enough to place a gloved hand on one charred scale the size of a shield. Heat thrummed. The scale pulsed as if alive. Drogon's eye narrowed, but he did not move. Bran whispered, "The ice sleeps, the fire watches. We weave the bridge." Drogon exhaled, sigh rumbling like distant thunder. Bran caught a flare of imagery. Vermithor soaring above the Joshua trees of Dorne in some forgotten era, belly casting a bronze gleam across red sands. The old beast scars glowed. He winged tirelessly toward the narrow sea, drawn by the harp's cord. Soon he would cross into the north skies. Bran let the vision pass before its scorched mind. Footsteps squelched behind him. Tyrion Lannister approached under a fur-lined hood, expression unreadable. Snow caked his boots, his cheeks were raw. "Your courier ravens beat me by half a day," he said. "I trust you're as surprised as I am to find me alive after that flight." Bran smiled thinly. "The gods are not done with you, Lord Hand. They rarely are." Tyrion eyed Drogon, took a measured sip from a hip flask, and offered it to Bran. "Mulled red. Restores courage, or so I tell myself." Bran declined. Tyrion drank again, wiped his mouth. "Queen Sansa returns within the week. She rides with 2,000 Knights of the Vale. They'll camp outside your walls if the yard is, otherwise occupied." He gestured to Drogon. "She'll want explanations. She'll have them." Bran watched Tyrion carefully. "And what explanation do you seek?" The imp considered. "Merely the truth, however impossible. I saw wings cover kings landing like a thundercloud. Now I stand before a dragon again, and somehow the city still stands unmarred. That is a marvel, Lord Bran. But marvels seldom come free." Bran folded his hands. "The cost remains to be paid. We gather coin. Coin, purpose, memory, unity." Tyrion rubbed his eyes. "Gods spare me visionary cryptics." He sighed. "The small council will demand assurances that this arrangement remains north of the neck." "The harp plays for all realms," Bran said. "Better they join the choir. Choirs require choirmasters, and choirmasters breed resentment. Then we play soft." Tyrion flashed a brittle grin. "Soft is not a dragon's forte." He bowed. "Very well. I'll draft suitable words for their lordships. Something about stewardship and shared destiny. They like destiny when it flatters." He turned to leave, then paused. "Bran, whatever this is, guard your soul. I've seen what power makes of good people. Bran nodded once, gaze drifting to the bleeding heart tree. I will try. Tyrion left footprints melting behind him. Bran closed his eyes, listening. The heart tree whispered. It spoke of roots, of deep deeds carved in substrate far below man's noticing. It sang of storms unborn. Bran answered in silence. Balance. PGSQL. 3 days passed, each one busier than 10. Woodsmen hauled fir trunks through Wintertown's muddy lanes. Masons mortared stone into towers. Blacksmith hammers rang from dawn to deeper night. The glyph pylons rose to full height, 12 in all, encircling Godswood, their surfaces studded with dragonglass medallions and iron runework. At the apex of each stood a copper vein shaped like a talon clutching a mirror of polished obsidian. When sunlight struck the mirrors, dark beams lanced inward, converging at the heart tree's crown in a lattice of shadow. At night, torchlight repeated the effect in red gold. Bran oversaw from a wheeled platform, a floating court, giving precise placement instructions that baffled stonecutters. He never consulted drawings. He traced shapes in frost, speaking of golden ratios and starlight angles until builders swore they erected a sundial for dragons. They were not wrong. By the fourth sunrise, the array stood complete. Vermithor arrived at dusk the same day. His roar shook panes in the maester's turret and sent children screaming under beds. He descended like a rusted comet, wings blotting a quarter of the sky. Drogon rose to meet him, crashing through tower tops in his haste. Sparks of flame met Bronn's thunder. For a heartbeat, Winterfell's courtyard became a forge of gods. Bran sat at the center of the glyph ring, eyes white, hair lifting in unnatural breeze. He poured calm through the harp. Meraxes hissed across centuries. Syrax crooned. The ice dragon's silence draped a cool blanket across fires. Drogon throttled back his blaze, rumbled greeting. Vermithor circled twice, then settled on cracked flagstones outside the ring, folding his wings with deliberate slowness. He sniffed the air, snorted steam, and lowered his massive skull until one bronze eye glimmered level with Bran. The old dragon's gaze was a history of wars, betrayals, crownings. He rasped in thought tongue, words like grinding chains. Why call me from my quiet grave? Has the world not had dragons enough? Bran opened his mind and showed him the Night King's march, the field of fire, the doom, the ice writhe in the cave. He spoke of balance, of memory, of dawn that belonged to no single species. Vermithor listened, lids narrowing. He tested the lattice with a breath of flame. Copper veins hummed. Mirrored obsidian swallowed the heat, refocusing it back into the heart tree where sap shimmered gold.
No escorch Mardvark.
The old dragon peered at the heart tree and huffed. Very well, let the boy tune the harp. But know this, storms answer only storms. Play timid and you lose the sky. Bran bowed his head in acknowledgement. Pride accepted, purpose woven. The bronze beast curled near the wellhouse, cracked tail coiling about a herrick that burst into steam. Stable boys wept but obeyed orders to bring ale-soaked hogs. Jon commanded torches extinguished lest they startle the elder. The night smelled of pitch, singed thatch, and promise. CSS. Queen Sansa arrived on the wind of that promise, leading a column of Vale Knights whose banners drooped in winter drizzle. Bronze and blue armor gleamed under sooty skies. Sansa rode at the head beneath a blue silk hood trimmed white. When she saw two dragons occupying the castle's breadth, one black and one bronze, she did not balk. She dismounted with queenly grace, smoothed her skirts, and marched straight for the Godswood. Tyrion rushed to intercept, but she brushed past him, red hair whipping. Bran awaited within the glyph circle, Jon at his side, Alice and Davos behind. Rickon watched from a low rooftop, clutching his drum. Drogon lounged, preening a ragged wing. Vermithor dozed. Sansa halted before Bran, eyes blazing. Brother, I left you a keep. You built a menagerie. Bran inclined his head. A sanctuary. She scanned the copper veins, the mirrored obsidian. And what sanctuary protects us if these beasts decide sanctuary tastes like flesh? Jon answered, they follow Bran's guidance. Guidance? I remember a queen who thought dragons only needed guidance until they leveled a city. Tyrion cleared his throat, but her glare silenced him. Bran met her anger with calm. Dawn is threatened. Fire alone cannot guard it. Ice alone cannot. Together, perhaps. I weave them here under watch of the weirwood. Will you join? Sansa's jaw flexed. She turned, taking in the dragon's menace. The smoke pluming from Drogon's nostrils, the iron odor of Vermithor's scorched scales. She heard builders on scaffolds, children crying in the bailey, ravens muttering overhead. Finally, she faced Bran again. If I join, I must be heard, and doubted. Promise me you will welcome doubt. Doubt is the whetstone of purpose, Bran said. I will welcome it. She exhaled, shoulders easing. Then I stand with Winterfell. She extended a hand. Bran clasped it. Their sibling bond knitted anew. Tyrion at last dared speak. Perhaps now the small matter of the small council? Sansa gave him a wan smile. Tell them the North has annexed the sky. They may send ravens if they wish to complain. Tyrion pinched the bridge of his nose. Diplomacy by raven seldom ends in tea and cakes, my queen. We have dragons, she replied. Let them bring cakes. Behind her, Davos chuckled despite himself. Tormund, freshly returned from a hunt, whooped approval. Even Vermithor cracked one eye, amused by mortal swagger. PGSQL. As winter settled into its long, bleak heart, Bran's harp swelled. Rhaegal's lost bones stirred deep within the shattered ice of the lake where the Night King fell, whispering green ember to his brother's call. In Far-Ass High, a slender scarlet hatchling clawed free of an obsidian shell, mewling a note that rang half across the world. In the ruined outpost of Valyrian Lef, a mad hermit kept 3 stone eggs warm in a pit of coals. One cracked, spilling pale smoke. All these tremors Bran felt, and he kept careful measure lest the weave tangle. He drafted a doctrine of flight, 12 oaths inscribed on hammered bronze plates to be mounted at each glyph pylon. The oaths declared dragons free, yet bound to a pact of guardianship. No fire upon city or field save to fight shadow. No claw against man save to avert oblivion. No hoarding of gold nor crown. Scholars scoffed. Maesters wrote treatises denouncing the absurdity of dragons obeying law. Bran answered none, but the dragons listened. The plates resonated with faint hum whenever Drogon or Vermithor walked the ring, as though the words sang themselves into scale. Queen Sansa convened an assembly of lords in Winterfell's rebuilt Great Hall. The Manderleys, Umbers, Karstarks, Glover, Serwyn, Flint, Reed, the North answered. From the Vale rode Lords Grafton and Royce. From the Riverlands, Edmure Tully's heir. Even Dorne sent an envoy, a soft-voiced princess who marveled at snowfall. They dined beneath dragonbone chandeliers, each lordling stealing glances at the roof whenever Drogon's tail scraped stone above. Bran addressed them through Jon's voice. He spoke of balance, of ice dragons and fire dragons and the thin edge between. He told them the realm stood upon the cusp of a new age, one in which men must share sky and soil with older powers. Some balked, citing crops and commerce. The Dorne envoy asked dryly who would reimburse caravans if dragons scorched them by mistake. Jon promised restitution from Winterfell's treasury. Sansa added that any lord refusing reckless dragons victim aid would answer the crown. That quieted them. Late that night, Bran rolled alone through snow-sparked courtyard. He paused beside Vermithor, who dozed by the spot where a forge once stood. The old dragon murmured echoes of past wars. Bran laid a hand upon a scar the width of a wagon, legacy of a Dornish scorpion bolt. Images flared. Maegor's brutal rule, roads lined with heads, temples burning. Bran gently overlaid that memory with another. A child's laughter on first snowfall, a direwolf pup tumbling after. The scar glimmered, tension softening. Yet within Vermithor, a sliver of iron remained. Resentment at the mortals who once rode him into slaughter. Bran accepted it, Not every wound must close to become kind. Some healed by staying half open, reminding the bearer to move carefully. On the second moon of the new year, the ice dragon stirred for the first time since its pact. Bran felt the tremor during a council meeting. He snapped from reverie, startling Tyrion mid-speech about grain levies. Bran spoke only 2 words. "It wakes." Jon and Alis rose at once. Davos fetched cloaks. Sansa signaled knights to ready horses. In less than an hour, a company rode north. Jon, Alis, Rickon, Ghost, 20 guards, and Bran in a new reinforced sledge rigged behind a team of shaggy northern ponies. Tyrion came too, half against his will. He was too curious to stay. They traveled by moonlight, snow hard enough to take hoof but softening at midday when weak sun bled warmth. The air tasted electric like the charge before lightning. Shadows moved in the forest. White shapes slipping between trees, not direwolves, not elk. Alis strung her longbow but did not shoot. Bran knew them. Whites dormant since the Night King's fall, reawakened by the ice dragon's stirring. They hovered at edges, uncertain, devoid of command. Ghosts snarled. The shapes melted back. They reached the wall breach. Bran felt the glyph. He laid their hum louder than forged bells. Frost and lightning licked its etched lines. A swirl of snow rose beyond like a cyclone in slow motion. Inside that swirl, a shape roared. A roar not of anger, but of raw exultation. The ice dragon had taken wing. Bran closed his eyes. He opened the harp. Threads of flame and frost braided. Drogon's deep bellow answered across leagues. Vermithor rumbled. Merax's hummed. The ice dragon's voice joined, high and clear, wordless promise. Bran guided south, but gentle, over empty lands, above unpeopled moor. Come to the glyph ring. Wind thundered overhead. The company shielded eyes as snow spalled off an unseen wing. In moonlight, they glimpsed a vast glimmering silhouette, translucent as blown glass, soaring southward. Bran sensed watchers in the forest kneel, whites surrendering to new order. He breathed relief. The dragon obeyed. They turned home. Dawn painted slopes pink by the time Winterfell's towers hove into view. The ice dragon was already there, circling lazy spirals above the glyph pylons. Frost streamed from wingtips, sketching ephemeral runes across sky. Drogon and Vermithor mirrored its path, one of darkness, one of bronze. 3 dragons tracing a triple helix above a castle of wolves. Bran felt the harp settle into trichord harmony. Yet he also sensed the strain. 3 voices balanced, but a 4th could tip. He thought of the hatchling in Ass High, of the eggs on Valyrian Lef, of whispers in the smoking sea. The song must be conducted with care. Too many instruments, and melody dissolves into noise. The next weeks were preparation. Finishing dragon stalls lined with obsidian slates that glowed if dragons breathed, dredging moat channels to reflect potential flame outward, stockpiling cattle from every vassal holdfast. Sansa ordered a code of flight lanes, air corridors above uninhabited ridges, to minimize terror for small folk. Tyrion drafted treaties with Dorne, the Reach, and the Free Cities, trading Dragonlead training in exchange for grain and precious metals. Gold flowed north like never since the Age of Heroes. But gold could not buy trust. In the Citadel, archmesters muttered of abomination. Ravens flew with black-feathered rumors. The Archmaester of Ravens had convened a shadow conclave. Reports of attempts to sabotage dragonglass shipments trickled in. Jon doubled guards. Alis ran spy nets. Bran watched threads of human fear spool outward like cracks in lake ice. One snowy midnight, a cloaked assassin crept over Winterfell's inner wall using grapnels tipped with silent pads. He carried a glass vial glowing sickly green, wildfire captured and distilled. His aim was the heart tree. Ghost smelled him first. The direwolf's howl split the hush. Guards converged, but the assassin flung the vial even as arrows pierced him. Time slowed. Bran, hearing the glass arc, reached out through Drogon's mind. The dragon's wing shot out, intercepting the vial with a membrane tough as boiled hide. The wildfire burst, bathing Drogon's wing in green flame that hissed and sputtered but failed to ignite the leather. Drogon roared. Vermithor rose snarling. The ice dragon shrieked, a sound that froze the wildfire midair so it fell as brittle emerald shards. In the aftermath, Bran rolled to the dying assassin. The man spat blood through broken teeth. "Knowledge will not bend to beasts," he hissed. Bran looked upon him with pity. "Knowledge is a beast," he answered. "Tame it poorly, it devours you." The man died. Jon ordered the body burned outside the walls. Bran sorrowed. The harp thrummed with disharmony again, small but widening. Fear was a note as potent as flame. He turned to writing, drafting treatises on dragon lore, on the doctrine, on balance, texts to be copied in every sept and hall. Words were spears against ignorance. Yet even as he dipped quill, he knew words alone might fail. PGSQL. One dawn, Rickon burst into Bran's solar, eyes wild. "Egg!" he shouted, thrusting a bundle of furs. Bran opened it. A dragon egg, no larger than a child's head, scales white as wedding cake with veins of gold. It had been found in the crypts, nestled behind Lyanna Stark's statue. No one knew how it arrived. Bran's fingers trembled over the shell. Heat pulsed within, alive. He sensed a fledgling thread already resonating with the harp, eager to join. Yet he hesitated. A fourth dragon in flesh, birthed within Winterfell's walls, could drown the balance. He ordered the egg placed at the glyph ring's center, unhatched under watch of a constant guard. He would delay its quickening until after the solstice, when the weave might hold stronger. That night, Lannister gold dragons clinked inside the great hall as lords feasted, a symbol of new prosperity. But Bran sat alone beneath the heart tree, listening. Snow fell gentle. Dragons slept, tails twined. The egg glowed faintly, as though reflecting starlight that did not reach past boughs. Bran traced runes in air above its shell. Stave of dormancy, rune of quiet heart, not of waiting. The glow dimmed, pulse slowing to match the tree's ancient rhythm. He breathed easier. A raven fluttered down, alighting on his chair arm. His eyes shone green, not black. Leaf-colored, children-colored. Cawed once, sharp. Bran's heart stilled. In that cry he heard warning. More strings pull tight. He followed its gaze skyward. Clouds parted, revealing a comet bruised purple, tail arcing across horizon. Such omens came rarely. The red comet before dragons last hatched, the jade comet at the doom. This one glowed amethyst, spitting sparks. Bran closed his eyes. The harp flared. Across the world, dragons woke. Shadows of wings spread over Valyria's smoking isles. Hatchlings cracked eggs in Pentoshi vaults. Ghostly memories birthed in the shivering sea. The song swelled toward cacophony. Bran opened his eyes to the raven. "I will hold," he whispered. The raven pecked his thumb, one drop of blood, and flew off into the comet's glare. Bran wheeled himself back to the glyph ring. He placed his palm upon the egg. He recited the doctrine aloud, each oath steady, each vow a chain of silk. Dragons stirred in dreams, listening. The weave tightened, straining but unbroken. Balance teetered. Bran anchored it with a final vow. No crown above the root, no flame above the frost, no harp unstrung. Wind died. Snowflakes hung motionless for a heartbeat. The egg's glow subsided. The dragons slept on. The comet burned away into dawn. Bran exhaled. He felt the cost. Bone-deep fatigue, threads of thought frayed, veins hot with borrowed fire and ice. But the song held. For now, he would need help, more weavers to share the strain. He thought of Alice, of Jon, of Sansa's keen mind, of Maester Wolkin's steady quill, and perhaps others. Crannig seers, Dothraki dreamers, Carthene shadowbinders. The symphony would need an orchestra, not a single conductor. He rolled from the godswood as sunlight crested Winterfell's walls, silvering snow. In the courtyard, children emerged to throw snowballs, their laughter echoing against stone, unconcerned by dragons overhead. That sound buoyed him, balance, he reminded himself, was not a state but an act, perpetual living like breathing. A harpist never stops plucking strings. A gardener never stops pruning branches. He must keep playing until the song became the world itself. He would play, and dawn, fragile and brilliant, would break anew under wings of fire and frost.